Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle is the latest film from director Jake Kasdan, and this movie is sort of a soft reboot of the original film because it takes place in the same universe, the same board game is discovered on a beach, but this movie opens up with the realization that kids aren't playing board games anymore, they're more into video games. So the game turns itself into a video game, so in that sense, it's rebooting what we've already known about this world. And this video game winds up in the hands of 4 high school students who are serving detention for different reasons. They all have their own different personalities, some inner conflicts, some conflicts with each other even, so they decide, let's just pass the time by just playing this video game. And just like how Alan Parrish was sucked into the game back in the day, these 4 get sucked into the video game, except they turn into the avatars that they chose on the game menu. Now these people have to fully embrace their gaming avatars, step out of their comfort zones in order to survive the game before they run out of their 3 lives. I wasn't really that interested in this movie. I thought the first one was pretty fun. It's not a great film or anything, and I don't hold it in like highest regards because it's not a perfect film, but it's a fun movie to watch, and I just really wasn't looking forward to this one because it just seemed like it was another film that was trying to pander to kids, like, hey, it's a video game, we got Dwayne Johnson, you love him, right? We got Kevin Hart, those two are in Central Intelligence, oh, they're so funny together. And the trailers they released, the visual effects weren't really impressing me that much, neither was the action they were showcasing. The humor was just kind of on and off for me in the trailer, and to top it off, they marketed it with the Welcome to the Jungle song, and that's the actual subtitle of the movie. I wasn't really excited, but I was very surprised walking out of this film because I actually had a solid time with this film. In fact, if I had to make a comparison, I'd say that it's this year's Goosebumps, kind of. A film that not a lot of people were looking forward to, but they walked out going like, hey, that was actually kind of a fun movie, and both of them were made by Sony. What really makes this movie work for me is the main cast. I think if they had gotten other people to play the parts, I don't know if I would have liked it as much. Dwayne Johnson is a very likable actor. He's got a lot of charisma to him, like seeing him on screen is just a delight, but in this film, he's kind of not playing his usual, I'm the tough guy, I'm like the strongest man in the room kind of thing. In high school, the character of Spencer, he's kind of a nerd. He plays a lot of video games. He's not the most muscular man in the world, kind of a wimp, but as soon as he gets into this game, he turns into Dwayne Johnson, and there's a lot of fun being had with Dwayne Johnson trying to act like he's super impressed with himself, like, oh my god, I'm so strong, I can do all these cool things, I have like no weaknesses. It was a really fun arc seeing this wimpy kid actually have to embrace the kind of strong persona being given to him. Also, Karen Gillan portraying the Ruby Roundhouse avatar, she is described as the killer of men in the video game, but in the high school life, the character of Martha, she's very shy to herself, doesn't really like socializing that much. So seeing her also have to take on this badass kind of persona given to her while she's wearing this ridiculous outfit for being out in the jungle, that was also a lot of fun. What they were doing with these characters is a neat way to kind of shake things up, because you are expecting Dwayne Johnson. He's going to be the strongest, most bravest guy, but then he's playing a nerdy high schooler, so he's not that. So it was a good way to take this film in an interestingly comedic direction. And even Kevin Hart, who I've mentioned before in other videos, I'm not the hugest fan of his. I think some of his stand-up is hysterical, but whenever you get him into movies, sometimes he's just kind of on and off for me. I think one of his best roles is in Central Intelligence because he's playing more of a straight man instead of playing the character where he just screams a lot. And in this film, he is playing that kind of fast-talking, screaming a lot character, but I think it works better in this film because in high school, the character of Fridge is like this really tall, like football player, and all of a sudden, he's transported into this guy who's like half his height, is not as strong as Dwayne Johnson, according to his character trait chart that they show. So in a way, Kevin Hart's kind of nervous, fast-talking manner is actually very appropriate for the situation, and yes, they do mention Kevin Hart's height. I'm missing the top 2 feet of my body, as they say in the trailer. I think it actually works a lot better here because that character, the football player, is much taller, so of course, having to be shrunk down instead of getting like a Dwayne Johnson role, which maybe he should have gotten, it's kind of a natural reaction to have. But by far, the funniest guy who stole this entire film, Jack Black. He, in high school, is a teenage girl named Bethany, who's blonde, super absorbed with herself, not really that much noticing the rest of the world until she's sucked into this game, and Jack Black has to completely copy her mannerisms and how she acts. The pitch of his voice has to change too, and it's excellent. There is no one who can make this work more than Jack Black. In the hands of someone else, this could have gotten irritating quickly, but Jack Black, hysterical. He stole every single scene he was in because he doesn't overdo it in a way that's like, alright, you're kind of getting on my nerves. He keeps it consistent as far as how he does it. And he has all the typical kind of teenage lines of like, where's my phone and all that, but there's also moments where they can actually make him a character, so that works very well. And they also have a really hysterical running joke that is, I guess, and to avoid spoilers, it's not very kid-friendly, I guess, and it was funny. Like, the entire theater was actually, like, laughing together at those moments. Jack Black steals this thing. It's all these different stories with these characters that makes the movie itself work. Without their likable characters that you're following, you wouldn't be interested in it. They make it work. The characters have conflict with each other, conflict with themselves, so while they're in these video game personas and they're traveling through the story, they actually get to change. They actually have interactions with each other that can affect each other. And while the film goes on, you can't help but grow a little bit more attached to them each and every time, especially near the end of the film. I wouldn't say that it made me cry. There are some reviewers out there saying like, I was about to shed a tear. That wasn't me. I just found the ending really, really sweet. In the context of the film, it is a very sweet ending. Nothing that'll make me cry. It's just very sweet. And that's the thing with this movie, is that it's nothing too overly complicated. It is just strictly fun film. I think that's what Dwayne Johnson's all about. Like, this movie is really fun, and it is. There's a lot of fun action sequences going on that'll have a lot of kids, like, amazed, and it'll actually have some adults entertained as well. There's a lot of great humor going on in here. There are a few jokes that didn't really work for me, but there's a lot of jokes that do work. Like I mentioned the Jack Black stuff earlier, a lot of stuff with Dwayne Johnson and even Kevin Hart. Karen Gillan has a couple funny lines, but this actor really surprised me. Nick Jonas. I wouldn't say he stole the movie or anything, he just surprised me in the sense of, I know him from the Jonas Brothers and that show he had on Disney, and I was not a fan of his, but now seeing him in this movie, he's actually a pretty solid actor. I'd honestly say that I could picture him being in other stuff, maybe other stuff that's more dramatic than Jumanji, because he was actually quite good here. And his character really is the one that's adding a little bit more to this film's story, and I'd say that it actually paid off, and he was a guy who I actually liked seeing in the film, as opposed to just, oh no, it's him. I actually liked him. I'd say the weakest link when it comes to the acting department is Bobby Cannavale, unfortunately, because I really do like him as an actor, but in this film he's playing that kind of generic villain who just wants the MacGuffin, this green jewel thing, and insects are crawling all over him, and he's intimidating his croonies all the time, and there's nothing really that special to him. There's no, like, important dialogue that he has that is, like, spine-chilling, and he doesn't do anything to, like, really affect your, like, tension at all. He's just kind of there to be, like, generic bad guy, and you might say, well, that was the point, to have, like, a generic, like, video game bad guy, but it didn't really come across that way for me, because I feel like if that was what they were going for, they would have, like, been able to, like, poke fun at the kind of character that he is, but they didn't really do that. Like, whenever he's on screen, they take it seriously, and I was just like, I feel like you could be playing this up for laughs, but instead you just wrote a generic villain. Another problem I had with this movie, not everyone is going to care about, but for me, I was just kind of thinking about it. The world itself, in the original film, Alan Parrish gets sucked into it and is living there forever. That's why when he comes out, he has a history with that place. And in this movie, they do have that similar thing when they get sucked in. It's an entire world there. But this time, because the board game changed into a video game, it's now with video game rules. You have non-player characters, like cutscenes going on, like charts that'll show you what your weaknesses and strengths are, tattoos of how many lives you have on your wrists and all that. And that is actually a really funny idea, but they're not really that consistent with it. They kind of contradict the rules they have going on, because earlier in the film they set up like they're showing like this backstory and the characters are talking like, wait, what's going on? Like, oh, I think this is a cutscene. So they make it kind of clear that the movie is not going to cut away from the main characters unless it's a cutscene, and they'll make it very clear if it is. But then later in the film, you see Bobby Cannavale with his bad guys, and they don't have characters going like, oh, wait, what's going on? Where are we? Or anything like that. It's just they cut away to have a generic bad guy scene. So in that way, they set up that the world itself is still large and expansive, but whenever you cut back to the heroes, they're still limited by the video game stuff. that's the part where it gets a little bit inconsistent for me, kind of contradicts the rules of the world itself. There's a couple other smaller things, but that was just like kind of the big thing that stood out for this example. But as I mentioned earlier, not a lot of people are going to pay attention to it that much because it is a really fun film. There's a lot of solid action sequences in this film with actual like great scenery, some solid cinematography, and some really good practical sets as well. The visual effects, that's where it gets a little bit tricky for me because in the trailers I was thinking that doesn't look too good, but there are some visual effect shots of the animals where I was thinking, okay, that's actually kind of decent. Then they show something else that doesn't look too good, so it's kind of a mixed bag in that area. I can't really see kids complaining about that too much though, which leads me to just the overall thoughts on the film, that this is a movie that kids are going to watch, and they're going to watch over and over again because it's fun and exciting. Dwayne Johnson's going to be like a new role model for a lot of younger people. So in that sense, this movie for kids is perfectly fine for them. There's some jokes that they will not get yet, but as they grow older, they'll recognize it. And it's also a film that adults can watch and be like, you know what? Solid film. Like, I can't lie, I had a fun time. That's kind of my experience with it, was that I did have flaws with the movie just going through, but overall I was entertained with the characters, the writing for them, because it was actually somewhat clever. Like, they had a lot of clever ideas going on here, and Jake Kasdan, despite his last film being Sex Tape, actually did a decent job directing this film. I'm gonna give Jumanji: Welcome to the Jungle a B-. It is a film with problems. The story itself isn't anything that new. The villain is kind of generic. I think there's a couple missed opportunities with the video game setting, but overall I had fun with the lead characters. Nick Jonas surprised me. The humor is actually pretty awesome, and the action scenes pretty fun to watch. So if you want just a fun time at the theaters, if you don't want to see any of the Oscar bait stuff with your kids, then go check out this film. I mean, there are better family films that have come out this year, like Coco or the Lego Batman movie, but this is a movie that just kind of knows that it's supposed to be more fun. Like, we can't be anything more than what we already are. We are Jumanji. The first film isn't even like a critical like classic or anything. That film is criticized, so we just need to make something fun, and that's what they did. And I honestly couldn't be happier with that, because I went in expecting the worst, and I actually got a fun time out of it. But if you've seen Jumanji: Welcome to the Jungle, leave in the comments below what you thought of it, and as always, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe. I'm Jackson Fulcher. See you guys next time.